together for an hour. And so during this hour, we're going to, of course, be showing the film. This is the first ever public viewing of the film. So you all who are here are going to be first to see it outside of the team who was part of its creation. So that's really exciting. And then after that, we've made some time for the folks who are on our panel to talk about everything around the film, including the actual film creation, the animations, and also for our seed keepers to talk about their work and to sort of introduce the seeds who are also made an appearance in the film. And so yeah, I think that's pretty much what the next hour is going to look like. So I'll turn it over to you, Rowan, to give us a little bit of an introduction. And also I think we're gonna do some panelist introductions right before we show the film as well. So I'll pass it over to you.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Rowan White. I probably know many of you, but I'm excited to see us all circle up around such a hopeful endeavor that we're inspired to share with you today. This has been many years, I think, in the making, and a movement, the seed rematriation movement has been, I think, generations accumulating prayers of our ancestors sprouting into being as these seeds find their way home. And so we're gathered here today to really celebrate and honor the courage of those ancestors who kept those prayers alive and kept the seeds alive against all odds, and even those seed ancestors and seed relatives who traveled many miles and in many ways down many trade routes and pathways, and sometimes found themselves in shelves or museums or seed banks, and really were the inspiration and the muse for not only the seed rematriation movement itself, of inspiring seed keepers like myself and many others here on the panel to listen to the call of the seeds and their desire to make their way back home into their home communities. And so this short film that many of us have worked together over the last few years to really culminate with a giant pandemic in the middle is really a love poem and an honoring song for the seeds themselves and the ways in which they've inspired us to respond, and in that responsibility to carry them home, for the bravery and the creativity of the seed keepers who are working in reconciliatory ways with in a cross-cultural collaborations to do the work, the healing work and the reconciliation work to build those pathways and bridges to bring these seeds home. And many of these folks are on the call today and are featured in our short film. And so, you know, we are thrilled to be able to at least provide a little beautiful essence of the seed rematriation movement. And we are excited also that we have a whole suite of resources that we'll be sharing with our wider community over the coming months. We're excited to announce that in addition to launching this short film, we are also launching a fundraiser that will support the seed rematriation work that Indigenous Seedkeepers Network and Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance have been a part of, as well as many of the seed keepers here in their own home communities have been sponsoring this work. And so this fundraiser, I think Kaylee will drop a link into the chat, will go to directly support the seed rematriation work, and will support seed keepers such as Becky and Shelly and Shiloh and Jessica and many of the others featured in this film as a continuation of this work, and making the possibility that many, many more seed varieties can come home from universities, museums, seed banks, and other places where they've been found. As I alluded to before we jump into the viewing, we are going to be releasing over the next few months a suite of resources, including podcasts where several of the seed keepers inside the Indigenous Seedkeepers Network will be sharing their stories of seed rematriation, and that's in collaboration with the Cultural Conservancy and their amazing podcast called the Native Seed Pod. So if you haven't checked out all of their previous episodes, perhaps Mateo or Kaylee, you could drop a link into the chat where we can listen in to those podcasts. So those will be dropping over the next 3 months, as well as in August, we'll be releasing an action guide, a seed rematriation action guide. So for those of you who are Indigenous and want to involve yourself in this people's movement of seeds reuniting with humans and with land, there'll be a whole heap of resources and springboards and calls to action in ways we can continue to bring more people in to this vibrant movement that honors this beautiful cultural inheritance of seeds. And so this project has been a collaboration between the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance and the Cultural Conservancy. It's been such a beautiful creative collaboration. So today we're going to be able to also talk with Mateo and Janjairo and some other folks who have been a part of the creative team that have made this particular short film possible. And so I think we're going to transition now to introducing some of the panelists that we have here joining us today, and then we'll be able to enjoy the premiere of this short film and then move forward in our conversations here today. But so grateful that you all have joined us, and just know this session is being recorded in terms of the panel discussion, but the short film will be available on our YouTube from here on out to share, to view, to use in all the ways that are supportive in your work. So thanks everybody. I'm gonna pass it over to Kaylee to just sort of pass, I guess we can pass the corn mic around. I wanted to talk into my corn microphone, so I'm gonna pass my corn microphone over to Kaylee and she can pass it around so we can hear all the beautiful introductions from our wonderful guests today.
Sure, thanks, Rowan. Well, I'm so excited to give everyone an opportunity to uplift all that you do. So I guess we'll just take it from the top. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure, I have my corn mic is a basket from my aunt of corn, super cute. Siguli swagwek, kanyete gelu niunget sungwe huene. Becky Webster niungets ot slunige. Wagwahoni wigit to load, honi out to aga, niwagada howanjot, to lunkoane neat wagenyu. Hello, everybody. My name is Ganyete Gay, which means snow scattered here and there. My English name is Becky Webster. I'm Wolf Clan, I'm Oneida, and I grew up near Duck Creek that runs through the Oneida Reservation. So do I pass the corn? Go ahead, Shelley.
Hello, everybody. Shelley Buffalo here from the Meskwaki Nation, residing in central Iowa. Just happy to join this panel discussion and be part of the overall seed rematriation effort.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Shiloh, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Bonjour, Bubonononque Indigenicas, Mishkudese Indodum. Hello, my name is Shiloh Maples. I'm calling in from Southeast Michigan today. And for the last about 10 months, I've been working with NAFSA as the Indigenous Seedkeepers Network regional coordinator here in the Upper Midwest, but I'm in the now the incoming program manager for NAFSA. And I'm really excited to be here with these wonderful folks and continue to support their work. And I'll pass the talking corn to Mateo.
Is this thing on? Hello, I'm Mateo Hinojosa, and it's been such an honor and a joy to work on this project with all of these incredible seed keepers and with all of these seeds. And just the spirit of this work and this movement is so inspiring. And I'm really excited for y'all to see the film. So I will pass it to John Heido.
This is my corn book. Hello, everybody. My name is John Jairo Valencia. I'm currently on Tongva territory in Los Angeles. My ancestors come from the Andes in Colombia, Central Mexico, and the Chihuahuan Desert, and I descend from the Jumano people. And yeah, I'm an artist, and I'm really grateful to have been able to participate in this beautiful movement. I'm also an alumni from the youth program at the Cultural Conservancy, Guardians of the Water, that I participated in 6 years ago. So I'm happy to stay connected and also to be part of this movement from the small backyard that I have here in Los Angeles. And as small as the smallest thing that we can do is part of the big collective movement. So yeah, I'll pass it back to Rowan.
Beautiful. I love all of the collective brilliance here. It's so powerful, and recognizing also the ancestral brilliance. I really want to acknowledge the ancestors that are here with us, who are really joyful and celebrating in this collective work that we're here to do today. So I guess without further ado, I'll pass it over to Kaylee, and she can cue up the film.
Sounds great. You were so excited. And I just wanted to let everybody know that we will have some space for questions at the end of this session. So if anything comes up to you, feel free to hang on to it or drop it into the Q&A box, and we'll be able to engage with what you're wondering about. So yeah, here we go. Here's a seed mother coming home.
Sacred seed, DNA, the memory of all time. Mother's twin sons, recorded code, creates all cycles of life. Fallen seed, plant and conceive, the up and down worlds collide. Over and over comes this sacred birth, the blood earth sacrifice. Spinning, orbit, escort, yea, magnetosphere, dancing in flight. Expands Turtle Island, Pangea, stands sky woman, tree of life.
Across Turtle Island, there is a growing Indigenous movement of the grand rematriation of seeds and foods back into our communities. Some have been missing for centuries, carried on long journeys in smoky buckskin pouches, encircled around the necks of peoples who were forced to relocate from the land of their births, their ancestral grounds. Some were carried away by trade or by theft from Indigenous homelands. Through displacement and acculturation of settler colonialism, some were completely lost in their communities of origin. Generations later, these seeds are now coming home. From the vaults of public institutions, seed banks, universities,
and seedkeeper collections, some laying upon dusty pantry shelves of foresighted elders, seeds patiently sleeping and dreaming, seeds waiting for loving hands to place them in welcoming soil once more. This movement of seed rematriation is a deep intergenerational prayer. This is powerful healing work of cross-cultural reconciliation. This work is cultural, spiritual, legal, political. This is seed justice. Seed by seed, variety by variety, food and seed networks, restoring the commons of nourishment. New ceremonies are being initiated to welcome home revered ancestral plant relatives. As we carry these sacred bundles of our seed relatives home to their mother communities, we reawaken time-honored relationships. Native farmers and gardeners, tribal community members, institutions and organizations, communities working towards rematriation of their precious seed relatives. When we come together to cultivate the earth and sing our seed songs and prayers on behalf of future generations, we embody the great generosity and benevolence of our own beloved Mother Earth. Those agreements that our ancestors made with their plant relatives, they run like wild rivers in our blood and our bones. And so there's an invitation for all of us, no matter what your ancestry is, we all have a responsibility to engage with this work of rematriation. Even just picking up a seed and beginning to grow that seed, it will rehydrate those agreements inside of you and bring this beautiful remembrance up from your very core.
All right. Well, thank you all again for tuning in. And I'm so excited that now this film is being shared with our communities, and also very excited now to talk to everybody who was part of it about, all that went into this, both the work and also the intentions. So I guess we're going to start off with just a short conversation with with Rowan, Mateo, and John Jairo to talk about the actual creation of the film. Maybe Rowan and Mateo can start us off by talking about sort of the roots and the planting the seed of the film itself, how everything started and grew from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it makes me, I know, Tiffany, I totally hear you, leaves us wanting more. And I was just going to say that because I have a really beautiful memory of Mateo coming into my home on the farm and us laying out on the floor, and we had butcher paper and markers and like imagery, and we had cooked up like an entire feature-length film and had all these visions of like grant making for this, and then like COVID hit, right? So then there was like all this bigger film that we wanted to put. So in some ways, I feel like this is a seed of a much bigger project that will emerge, like a mixed media, multimedia project that is wanting to be birthed, right? And so I'm actually going on creative sabbatical here in just a few weeks, and part of some of the things I'm dreaming into is dreaming into ways in which we can continue to weave together the beautiful multi-sensory stories and narratives from our own people in this work. And so the creative, I'll pass it over to Mateo, but I just say the creative way that we got through filming something of this nature during a global pandemic is that we had to get creative. So some of the voices and the narratives and the things that maybe would have been held inside of this short film, we're moving into the audio realm through podcasts and through the action guide. And so again, this is just like an appetizer, I think, of what I think could really emerge. And so Mateo, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about our creative process and how you helped sort of steward this idea into fruition, because all hats off to you. You've been such an amazing creative partner in this.
Oh, it's been such an honor. Thank you, Rowan. I'm just so grateful to have been collaborating with you, Rowan, with all these amazing, powerful seed keepers, and with all the folks at the Cultural Conservancy where I work, and with Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance, and all of the different organizations that everybody is involved with. The network is vast and just so inspiring. All the amazing work being done on the ground in relationship with the seeds and their people.
Yeah, amazing. And it's interesting because with the action guide that we've been pulling together, it's really amazing to see the kerneling of this movement, to see something, so powerful and potent as the seed rematriation, and how many people are getting inspired to take this work into their communities. And I think really when we were setting the vision for bringing this film together is that we hope that this would be something that would sort of rehydrate this longing and this desire, and an invitation, really, an invitation for you all who are listening and participating and watching, that you're a part of this movement too, and that it inspires this call to action, that many of us here on the call have been so blessed and honored to be a part of the seed rematriation work with collaborating partners like Seed Savers Exchange, the Field Museum, University of Michigan, etc. But that this was directed directly towards Indigenous peoples to remind us of the strength and tenacity of those ancestral prayers that inspire us to continue to do all the things that we need to do to bring these seeds home. And this movement requires all of us. Like, it requires all of us, even farmers and gardeners and seed keepers, but also artists like John Jairo and many other people who have a voice and a vision to contribute to this larger rematriation movement. Because while the microcosm of this movement is finding seeds inside of museums and universities, there's also a macrocosm, which is returning to cultural sanity again, right? Of bringing these seeds back and rehydrating those original agreements and our relationships to seeds and foods and land. And so that's really what the essence of this short film and collaboration, and then hopefully it will spiral out and there'll be many other voices that continue to contribute to this to this love poem, right? So I would love to perhaps invite Jean Jairo also, because Mateo, maybe you want to just set the stage in terms of our vision for having some art and animation, and then maybe pass it over to talk about how that was implemented.
Yes, of course. Yeah. My memory of how it really began was with Rowan and I in the seed kiva, and just listening to the seeds and the spirit in that place, and feeling like we needed to invite people to fall back in love with seeds as our mother, and fall back in love with mothering seeds, with that rematriation of bringing the seeds back to their ancestral peoples and soils, and also falling back in love with just the beauty of their faces, the beauty of their voices, and also the beauty of our common ancestry, and our common mother, which is Mother Earth. And so while we were sitting with this in the kiva, Rowan brought up, well, she said what came to her was the Mohawk cosmogenealogy in the story of how these such important central seeds came from that story, and from out of the body of Sky Woman's daughter, and with Grandmother Moon grieving, and that moment, which is just such a beautiful, powerful story. And in order to tell it, I saw some of John Jairo's art that I've just loved his art for so many years. And he has a beautiful piece of a woman with corn growing out of her. And it immediately, it's more from a Mayan tradition, I believe, that particular piece. Maybe John Jairo can say more, obviously, but I just thought, oh man, it would be so perfect to work with him. And so I reached out, and he was generous enough to give us some of his time and art.
Yeah, and part of wanting to invite art in, and we can also talk about the imagery of the seeds. I'd love to bring that in too, but part of inviting an artist in is that, John Jairo, you were able to bring the imagery and the vibration of these cosmogenealogical stories from my people in a way that, like, if I was sitting there telling the story, it's just like so evocative and multi-sensory. And so I just would love to hear sort of your, as you got invited into this project, sort of your process in taking some of the ideas that Mateo and I had curated, and how that translated into making this art come to life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, I just want to say how much gratitude I have for being invited into this project. Like, first off, like, that was such a big invitation for my own transformation and myself. Like, this is the first time I've ever done animation. And I was a little intimidated at first, but it felt right. It felt right because of what the purpose of this film was, and what the purpose of this movement is. And I want to say that as an artist, I feel like I found my voice through the rematriation movement. And I didn't have that term for it until now, but my voice as an artist evolved out of the need to make our return to ancestral ways, to our cultures, and us reconnecting with the earth desirable for our people. And I think for me, like, as a young person, being able to have exposure and connection to this movement, I feel like it was such a privilege that a lot of my peers didn't have that. So I feel like for my art, the purpose of it is to make it desirable and to make people want to connect. And I think, with animating the Mohawk creation story, and an aspect of it, I felt like I needed to do it justice. I was like, okay, I need to really, do my research. Mateo shared with me some stories. I did other research. I was like studying like traditional clothing and what type of plants grew in that part of the world, and or grow in that part of the world. So it was like, it took some time for me to feel like I can do the story justice. And I think, Mateo was so gracious and generous with his direction and teaching me, because I had never done animation, and it was the first time that I was learning. So I feel like just, as a young person being invited, I also felt like mentorship, and it made me, feel like I belong in this movement. And I think that's the purpose of our story, right? The purpose of creating this film is to make all of us belong and feel like that this movement is important and vital to our survival for the generations to come. So, I'll share that much just because I feel so grateful, and I feel butterflies still.
I love it. Well, I just want to uplift something you said, which is that part of the seed rematriation movement is cultivating a culture of belonging inside of this food sovereignty movement, and so many layers of belonging, right? Like of us restoring relationship with seed and land and with each other, and with lineage and legacy. And so I just really want to uplift that and uplift the role of young people like yourself. Like you said, this is pleasure activism. This is making things pleasurable, desirable. Like, how do we make this movement irresistible, right? And that is like what the food summits, the Indigenous food summits have done. It's like, we take the bite of the foods, or we see the art, and it's like, oh, I want to be a part of that. And so that's like, this intergenerational work is inviting in all kinds of people and saying, you all eat, right? You all descend from people who had these beautiful storied cosmogenealogical story, connections with plants and with land. And so how do we bring that in again to invite in a chapter of cultural sanity in the, into the future? And how do we infuse that into our food sovereignty movement? And the role of art and the role of storytelling and narrative sharing is such a vital part of this movement. And so I'm so grateful. I think that might be a good segue perhaps into being able to invite some of the other guests that we have here today to share a little of their story. I know there's glimpses of their beauty in this film, and their stories will continue to be shared through the podcast and through other through the action guide. But just getting to hear from Becky and Shelley and Shiloh about what the seed rematriation movement means to you, and how it's impacted and inspired you along your seed path. So perhaps I don't know, Becky, do you want to just take the talking corn, so to speak, and kick us off?
Sure. So that's such a huge question, and I think it's a huge responsibility, and to try to condense it down is a little bit rough, but I'll sure give it a try, because these seeds are so powerful, and to be able to get them returned to us is just, I just don't really have the words to describe it. But the way I think of it is that if you look at our history of colonization, assimilation, and removal, so much was taken away from us. And we've lost that relationship oftentimes with our seed relatives. And especially for, in our case, the Oneida people, we were removed from what was New York to what would later become Wisconsin. So we were even removed from our other Haudenosaunee relatives. So to be able to reclaim some of those Haudenosaunee seeds and plant them in the ground here on the Oneida Reservation in Wisconsin, to watch them grow and to nurture them, and then be able to share them with the Oneida community has been a really phenomenal task that I enjoyed every step of the way. And it was really great to just be able to reestablish that. And one of the things to note is in the video, you can see I'm picking a Seneca Bender melon. And I think that is interesting because they were part of the potential Haudenosaunee seeds that we could choose from as part of a rematriation project with Seed Savers Exchange. Well, it's essentially a cantaloupe, which is not indigenous to this continent, but yet seed keepers, or in the past, seed companies would slap an indigenous name on a seed to try to increase marketability. So our seeds have lost their names. Other seeds have, different names in different communities. It's the same seed. Also, different seeds will have the same name. So it's been all very confusing, but it's been a huge learning curve and a wonderful learning process to get those seeds names and to get their stories again and be able to share that with people. So it's been an incredible privilege to be able to do that.
Beautiful. I love it. And Becky's been a part. So in 2017, we initiated Indigenous Seedkeepers Network initiated a relationship with Seed Savers Exchange, which is the largest public access seed bank in the country, and who houses 30,000 plus varieties in their collection. And so I had served on their board of directors and was working with them and saying, I know there's thousands of varieties in your seed bank that have their Indigenous origins in our communities. And so Becky has been a part of a growing group of individuals really stewarding and that relationship and that work with Seed Savers Exchange. And there have been dozens and dozens of varieties that have returned home in that partnership. So grateful for for Becky's participation in that. I'd love to hand it over to Shelley, because I know Shelley has also been a part of the Seed Savers Exchange relationship, but also has forged some interesting relationships at the Field Museum as well. And so Shelley, would love to hear a little bit from you about how this work has been meaningful to you.
Sure. And actually, currently this growing season, I've been at Seed Savers Exchange as a seasonal seed steward. I chose to do this to, kind of like do that groundwork of and understanding, the practice of seed steward at Seed Savers, as well as when I say groundwork, it's very hands-on. I mean, I'm out yesterday, I was weed whipping cover crops around, our different varieties. And it's so good to be out there, especially looking out for those ISKN seeds that Seed Savers is, are growing out for ISKN. Going to the Field Museum relationship, that started in, I believe that was 2019. We were contacted by the Field Museum, and it was Sean Sherman, the Indigenous chef, the sous chef, as well as I believe Liz Hoover, who helped to initiate looking at the Field Museum's collection of seeds from over 100 years ago. And so through that partnership, we brought a number of seeds home. The interesting thing about the seeds is that they're, just for practical purposes, they're too old. Their little lunch boxes are pretty much empty. So trying to get them to germinate is just not possible. But the beautiful thing about these seeds coming home was, first, we had a reference point of the type of biodiversity of seeds that, I guess a snapshot basically about the biodiversity of seeds that were grown out by our Meskwaki people. And the other thing too about these seeds coming home is that, yes, the seeds found their way home, but the seeds themselves are guiding us home, including me. So through this rematriation relationships with the Field Museum, as well as Seed Savers Exchange, and all of the partnerships, Rowan, Shiloh, Becky, Jessica, the chefs as well, has been powerful medicine for me personally. And I think that when we're looking at the overall picture of colonization and the genocide and the ripping away of mothers, the children from their mothers, the seeds are bringing those children back home to their mother's arms. Sorry, getting emotional.
Yeah, that's very emotional. No need to apologize. It's a powerful medicine. And thank you for sharing from your heart, Shelley. Your presence in the circle is so welcomed, and we're so grateful for that. Shiloh, I know that you have been working also with another initiative through the University of Michigan. I know that there's been an emerging project there, really looking at some of the seeds that are emerging from the collections there. And you have participated as well in the Seed Savers Exchange collaboration. So we'd love to hear a little bit more from you about, how this has impacted your seed path work.
Yeah, so I hear bits of myself or similar paths in all of your stories and what you've shared. Even thinking about the Mohawk story that's part of the film in a large way, a very similar way is to what I think Shelley was just sharing. Our foods and our seeds have played such an instrumental role in my journey of coming home to myself, throughout my life. And several years ago, I was working in partnership with the Indigenous community in Detroit and to start a food sovereignty program and for our community. And one of the parts of our program was to start a seed library because we were looking around, we wanted to be more food sovereign, but the foods we wanted access to just didn't exist in our community anymore. And so I sent out a letter to various Native food programs, letting them know what we were trying to do and asking for donations of seeds, and said that we would try our best to care for them and to share them with the community. And at that point, I don't think I really knew like what I was what path I was committing myself to. At that time, I knew very little about seed stewardship. But I felt in my heart that commitment. And so I did what I could to learn and to continue learning, like, what is that sacred responsibility of caring for these seed relatives? And that connected me eventually to all of you through this journey. And as Shelley said, it's just been tremendous medicine. And I'm really grateful now to be in a position with Indigenous Seedkeepers Network and at NAFSA, where I can help support others who are on this journey too. And that feels like such a tremendous, I'm getting teary now, such a tremendous gift and honor to be a part of other people's healing and journey back to themselves. And I'm even getting goosebumps right now, but kind of, bringing our communities back together. And it's just such a beautiful way of life. And, speaking a little bit more to what's happening here at the nearby at the University of Michigan, it's such a beautiful relationship and partnership that's been growing here that really, I think, could be a model for other type of reconciliation work around seeds, where the intertribal community here in around the Great Lakes, representatives are working with the museum folks the archaeology museum folks to select seeds every year to be grown at the botanical gardens. And then the daughter seeds are rematriated or brought home to the communities of origin. And it's all done in a ceremonial, really spiritual, intentional way that we're doing that. And it's just really remarkable to see how the impact that has for the communities that are a part of it, and also to, I think, for our allies at the large institutions to model to others how they can be good relatives to our communities, and how they can be supportive of the work that we're doing, this healing work.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shiloh. We could just talk for hours and hours with these wise women who have been just so inspirational in this work. And again, we have these podcasts coming, and then again, they'll be continued. Each of you embody such a beautiful reflection of your ancestral brilliance, of all the women who came before you and all the women who will have yet to come, the gifts that you give to them. And so thank you so much for your participation, not only in this video, in this short film project, but also in the movement at large. You inspire and you pave the way for many, many other young women and men and people of all expressions to join this circle. I would like to just also state that We did center the seeds in this, as you noticed in the credits. We've credited the seeds. I noticed folks in the chat were mentioning how beautiful that was, and I just want to honor Mateo's creativity in all the ways in which he was getting the seeds to look like moons and morphing in all these ways. And so that was quite a feat, Mateo. I know there's lots to say on the logistics of making that happen, but that creative vision really came to life, and it's so beautiful to see those seeds being centered, because they're the bosses of this project. They're the real invisible leaders in this work. Right, Mateo?
Thank you, Rowan. Yes, absolutely. And it's so wonderful to be able to really put our creative work at the service of the seeds and to give them space to speak and to show themselves.
Yeah.
It's really an honor. And I do encourage people to watch it on YouTube, or when we have it uploaded, or we'll be sharing the link this afternoon. And you'll be able to see the seeds much better, and the animation and everything, you know, the compression over Zoom doesn't quite do it justice. So it's in 4K, and you'll be able to see it absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're excited to gather and celebrate in person again before too long.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And so I know that, you know, I'll make a few closing remarks, but I know that we wanted to leave a little bit of space if there are people who in the, you know, in the audience and community here, if you have questions or thoughts that you'd like to share. I know that Kaylee has, you know, set up the Q&A box. And so if it looks like there's a couple questions in there. Kaylee, do you want to uplift a question and offer it to the group?
Sure, yeah. So our first question is coming from Ricky, who is wanting to know about the biggest challenge in creating the film.
COVID, I don't know, maybe COVID, the pandemic. I think that was a big one. Was
sure. We had all our plans to go all over and visit all these different seed keepers and tell the story in great depth and length, and COVID.
Yeah, COVID. So that was probably our biggest challenge. I think we all can resonate with how challenging and how creative we've become in the face of a pandemic. But I think that also presented another challenge, which is that, okay, we went from thinking of this being a much bigger film to just, you know, something that was short and like that sort of appetizer, that sort of invitation. And then, so how do we translate? I mean, I am not a woman of few words. Like, I am known to be a woman of many words. I am not known for being concise. So just like condensing it and getting the essence of it. And so that's where the beauty of John Jairo and Mateo and their like visual creativity helped us to weave and tell a story that, again, is so multidimensional. So I think that's also a challenge, is just compressing a lot of information. And so that's why we also were like, oh, we have a suite of resources that we can add to this with the action guide and the podcasts and stuff, because how can you tell the seed rematriation story in 6 minutes?
Really, and please do check out those podcasts, because this is really about falling in love and getting that connection and experiencing the beauty. And the podcasts have elements of that as well, but they're really in-depth storytelling and really focusing on a single seed keeper for each episode for between half an hour and an hour. So Becky Webster and Shelley Buffalo and Jessica Greendeer, 3 of the seed keepers who are featured in the film, and 2 of which are here today with us, are our guests of honor on the first 3 episodes of our next season of Native Seed Pod. So please check it out. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll continue. And really, you know, I'll just say this because it's coming to mind, which is that part of these coming months of these resources and kind of complementary pieces that we're launching is an invitation for you all, you know, call to action, which is, you know, if you are active on social media, what are the ways in which you could, like, we would invite you to use the seed rematriation hashtag, like hashtag seed rematriation. Kaylee, maybe you can just drop that in the chat. if you are involved in a seed rematriation project and want that amplified and uplifted as a part of this, or want to be in this community of practice together with all of us who are engaging in this work. And if you have projects that are sort of emerging and sort of germinating, and you want insight or reflection from perhaps others in the circle who have had a little bit more experience engaging with outside institutions. Again, the action guide's coming, but we're also all really available to engage and chat and talk. So you can connect with Shiloh Maples at NAFSA if you are interested in getting involved in the seed rematriation work, or I'm sure many of the other panelists would love to hear from you from the region. So I just wanted to uplift that. Kaylee, are there other questions?
Yes, we do have a couple other questions. One question is wondering about the larger full-length film, the idea that you talked about when we were listening to you talk about the beginnings of this project. They're wondering what you can share about the ideas that came out when you first envisioned this film as, in maybe a larger project.
Yeah, we have this great mandala. We should probably share it as like a behind the scenes. Like there's some behind the scenes stuff that we would definitely love to share as we, so tune into our social media, especially our Instagram at NAFSA, it's Native Food Alliance. We hope to sort of uplift some of that, but some of the storyboarding and that we were doing, I remember we were using sort of a framework around the work that reconnects with Joanna Macy. Mateo, do you want to speak a little bit into some of these like larger themes that we were hoping to sort of kind of flesh out and might still be able to in some of these extended projects?
Absolutely. Well, I think the cycle of seeds is really the basis of kind of the structure of the film that we were envisioning, going from seed to seed and throughout the growing season and the harvesting, and then back to seed again. And we talked about working with a structure that Joanna Macy teaches, who's a teacher of mine, which is beginning with gratitude and then moving to the honoring the struggle and honoring the pain, and then going back and taking action and out in the world and returning to gratitude, going around a cycle and of that, which is really similar to the cycles of life, and it's inspired in the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And we dreamed of really going into some depth about the loss and the trauma that losing the seeds has been. Grounding ourselves first in the gratitude of the beauty and the power of this movement and of the seeds, and then really going into some depth into some of the stories of people losing their seeds and the separation.
Yeah, the impact of that, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Orphaning of so many cultures and peoples, and then really recognizing that pain and that trauma is also a sign of how connected we are, and how this relationship with seeds is really so central, and with plants and all our relatives is so central to our well-being and the well-being of the entire earth. And,
yeah. Can I just chime in there, which is that also, I don't want to make assumptions, but I have in relationship with many of you on this panel and many seed keepers who've been a part of the seed rematriation movement. And many of us have looked to food and seed as a means of finding our way home, right? As a means of finding our way back to a sense of who we are as modern Indigenous people. And in some ways, like I always say that the seeds brought me through a very unconventional rites of passage, and the seeds in some ways were my aunties and my grandmas, and like teaching me all these things that I didn't inherit, in a certain way that maybe many hundreds of years ago I would have, right? And so I think in some ways part of the trajectory of the story that we will continue to tell beyond even the short film as a part of this rematriation movement is that from the shadow side of the work, right? Like the reckoning with the pain, so much of the, of this work is being in circle with Indigenous peoples who maybe didn't even realize the scar tissue or the wound that they had of like, oh, this was our birthright, this was our cultural inheritance, and these seeds aren't in our bundle, and reckoning with the sadness and the grief and perhaps the rage that comes, you know, from modern Indigenous peoples of being like disinherited or being severed from those very beautiful and life-giving relationships. But then how are we taking, like, part of the beauty of, and I think the power of the intergenerational healing that comes from food sovereignty work and seed rematriation work, is that we're invited to sort of take those feelings, you know, all of those feelings of sadness and grief, and compost them and metabolize them and transform them into life-giving activities like feeding our community and sharing seeds with our community. And it's so powerfully transformative. I think all of us have been changed for the better in that transformation, and the way that the you know, I always say the seeds are healing us. They're really healing us. And so I think, you know, continuing in a bigger project, I know in my creative sabbatical, I am wanting to, you know, commune with people and, you know, tell these stories in multi-dimensional ways. And so we'll see what sort of gets birthed, but I know there's a lot of layers and a lot of narratives. And a key part of this is centering our voices, right? Like, there are many people who want to tell our stories, and Indigenous peoples are no stranger to outsiders, including ethnologists like William Jones at the Field Museum, you know, who was sort of an insider outsider, but, you know, outsiders who want to tell the story of us and our seeds and our food and our land. But this is an invitation for us to reclaim our voice and our stories, and telling our stories of our seeds and our seed songs and all of this. So again, I think this is also an invitation for many voices to come together to share this. So hopefully that answered your question. I think we're coming up on the hour, so I just want to honor people's time and space. So maybe, Kaylee, if it's all right, we could just move to just some closing remarks, and then we can, you know, say farewell to everyone. Does that sound good, Kaylee?
Yeah, most definitely. And I know that so many of us would like to stay in the space all day long. But yeah, in the respect of everyone's time, I think we will begin to wrap up here.
Okay,
Just to begin with thanking everyone again for spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon. As we shared a little bit, we'll be posting this full film now to NAFSA's YouTube channel, as well as our Instagram. And so if you'd like to watch again, it'll be available there. And if you'd like to share, that would be even better. I saw some people saying in the chat already who they intend to share this film with, and that's so wonderful to see already. And I know a big hope of all of ours that this message reaches as many people as possible.
The mycelia, we want it to go fungal, right? Like the mycelia, we want it to go fungal out into the world, and ways in which we can inspire others to add their voices to it. So in closing, I just want us to ground. I want us to feel how we're feeling in this space, the feelings that are coming up for us as we watch the seeds and the stories and the emotions. I want to honor that. I know that it's full spectrum emotional work that we're doing. I want to acknowledge that the ancestors are here with us and holding us in this space. For those of us who are feeling like, oh, I just want a little bit more. I want a little bit more of the film. I want a little bit more of the connection to this movement. I want to know what I can do to be a part of this. That's why that was part of those of us who were involved in the founding of Indigenous Seedkeepers Network and NAFSA, Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance as a whole, was to create a container and a space where people could come together. And so I really hope that if you're not a part of our sort of, you know, community via our newsletter or our social medias, you know, to make sure that you're connected, because there are lots of ways in which our Seedkeeper network is expanding. We're creating these regional seed hubs that will be, we're beginning in the upper Midwest, but we're expanding to the Northeast, and there's these replicable cooperative seed hubs that we're developing. And so we're having conversations like this often in those circles and in those spaces. And so if this is something that you're yearning for and longing for, to be in a community of practice with others who are involved in this work, then we invite you. Indigenous Seedkeepers Network is a people's movement. We invite each and every one of you. So reach out to us to see how you can get involved in your particular region and in some of our events. So I would like to just create that invitation. Again, if you feel so inspired to contribute to our fundraiser that will directly support this work, there will be, again, we'll drop the link in the bio as well. And I would just like for us for a moment to just sort of center ourselves where we are, wherever we are on Turtle Island, or perhaps even beyond, and recognize that in this moment, we're witnessing a reseeding of the people. We're witnessing the seeds coming to us, whether it's through dream or through our art or in our gardens, in all these different ways that they're coming back to us. And our elders often say that, I think it's a real privilege to be able to carry a seed bundle as a seed keeper. And our elders often say that with privilege comes responsibility. And I like to think about the word responsibility in its parts, which is an ability to respond, right? And many of us have the ability to respond in this time to the call of the seeds. And the seeds are asking to come home, and they're asking to be centered in our lives again, so that we can witness and be a part of an embodied, dignified resurgence of Indigenous peoples in this time where we're healthy, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, culturally. And the seeds go into our bodies, and these foods go into our bodies, and they help us heal in ways I think we can't even imagine. And so I really want us to put our hearts and our minds together towards that grand lineage, that the ancestral brilliance, that grand lineage of ancestors who, against all odds, kept seeds alive and their stories and their seed songs for our nourishment and for our well-being. And so in this moment, if there's anything that we take away from being in this circle and community in this moment, is that perhaps we can take an inhale and an exhale and make renewed commitment to be one human who weaves themselves back into this beautiful story, into this beautiful unending creation story of our relationship with land and with seed and with food. And no matter who you are and who you descend from, you have a role to play in this rematriation as we begin to heal from the brokenheartedness of this cultural insanity of our times. And perhaps you can join us in this work as we move forward. And so we make that renewed commitment in this moment. And so I'm just so grateful for each and every one of you, for the brilliance and inspiration that you bring to the movement, and looking forward to connecting with you all as we continue to move this forward. And as this movement grows like seeds, like I said, it's kerneling, right? It started with a few seeds, and it's going to multiply exponentially. So excited to greet you along the path. So thank you all.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you all again. All right, I guess we will say goodbye for now, and excited to maintain community with everybody. All right. We'll see you next
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
All right, Olagi.